Is this some kind of joke? Detective Marcus Reed's voice echoed in the empty courthouse hallway. He was 32 years old, 3 years on homicide, and he'd just cracked what he considered to be the biggest case of his career. A murder trial was set to begin in courtroom 4A in less than 2 hours, and he had his suspect dead to rights. Or so he thought. Standing in front of him was Henry Williams, the courthouse janitor. At 67, Henry had been mopping these floors for the past 5 years. He was a quiet man, always polite, always invisible. The kind of person detectives walk past 100 times without seeing. But this morning, Henry had done something unprecedented. He'd approached Detective Reed with a concern about the case. "Detective, I think you might have the wrong man," Henry had said quietly. Marcus had been reviewing case files at a courthouse bench. He'd looked up, barely registering who was speaking. "Excuse me?" "The Johnson murder. The man you arrested, David Martinez. I don't think he did it." Marcus had laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "You don't think? And you are?" "Henry Williams. I work maintenance here." "Right. The janitor." Marcus had closed his file. "Look, Mr. Williams, I appreciate your concern, but this is a homicide investigation. We have forensic evidence, witness testimony, motive, and opportunity. Martinez confessed." "Confessions can be coerced," Henry had said calmly. "Are you seriously telling me how to do my job? You mop floors, old man. I investigate murders. There's a difference." Henry hadn't argued. He just stood there with that quiet, patient expression. It was that patience that irritated Marcus most. It felt like pity. Now, 2 hours before trial, Marcus was pacing the hallway, his confidence starting to crack. His lead prosecutor, Assistant DA Sarah Chen, had just called him with concerns. The defense had filed a last-minute motion presenting new evidence that contradicted key elements of the prosecution's case. Nothing that would derail the trial, but enough to create reasonable doubt. "How did we miss this?" Sarah had demanded over the phone. Marcus didn't have an answer. He'd been so certain. David Martinez was a known associate of the victim, Thomas Johnson. They'd argued publicly 2 days before the murder. Martinez's fingerprints were at the scene. And he'd confessed after 18 hours of interrogation. But now, standing in this hallway, Marcus felt something he hated. Doubt. Henry was down the hall, emptying a trash bin. He moved methodically, economically, like someone who'd done this job so long it required no thought. Marcus watched him for a moment, his pride warring with his desperation. Finally, Marcus walked over. "What did you mean? When you said I have the wrong man?" Henry straightened up slowly, his back protesting the movement. "I've been listening to the case for 3 weeks. During pre-trial hearings, I'm here every day. I hear things." "You eavesdrop on court proceedings?" "I clean courtrooms, can't help what I hear. And I've heard enough to know your case has problems." Marcus crossed his arms. "Such as?" "Your timeline doesn't work. Martinez allegedly killed Johnson at 11 p.m. on the 15th. But the coroner's preliminary report said lividity patterns suggested the body had been moved. That means Johnson wasn't killed where you found him, which means your entire crime scene analysis is based on the wrong location." Marcus blinked. How did a janitor know about lividity patterns? "The coroner amended that report. The body wasn't moved. The coroner amended it after you arrested Martinez. Interesting timing. What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you got tunnel vision. You found a suspect who fit, and you forced the evidence to match." Marcus felt his face flush with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about. Martinez confessed. We have his fingerprints at the scene." "His fingerprints were on a glass in the kitchen, Johnson's apartment. They were friends. Of course his prints would be there. That doesn't prove murder." "He had motive. They argued about money." "Lots of people argue about money. Doesn't make them killers." Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Listen, old man. I don't know what crime shows you watch or what you think you know, but this is real police work. I have a solid case, The trial starts in 2 hours. If you have actual evidence, something concrete, then share it. Otherwise, get back to your mop and stay out of my way." Henry looked at him for a long moment. Then he reached into his maintenance cart and pulled out a small notebook. "What's that?" Marcus asked, eyeing the worn notebook. "Notes, observations." Henry flipped through pages covered in neat handwriting. "I've been watching this case closely. Thomas Johnson was a financial advisor. Clean record, respected. But 3 weeks before his death, his behavior changed. Changed how? He started working late, coming to the courthouse for civil filings during off hours. He filed 2 restraining orders in the week before he died." Marcus frowned. "We know about the restraining orders. One against Martinez, one against a former client who'd threatened him. We investigated both." "Did you investigate why Johnson was suddenly so afraid? A man with no history of conflict suddenly filing multiple restraining orders? People get scared. That's not unusual. But it is unusual when that person was embezzling from his clients and knew he was about to be caught." Marcus went very still. "What did you say?" Henry turned his notebook to show Marcus a page covered in financial notations. "I listen during hearings. I hear lawyers talking in hallways. 3 of Johnson's clients had filed civil suits against him in the month before his death, all claiming financial irregularities. Johnson wasn't a victim of a violent crime. He was a man who'd stolen a lot of money and was running out of time. Even if that's true, and I'm not saying it is, Martinez still had motive. Johnson owed him money. Martinez loaned Johnson $15,000 6 months ago. But did you look at who else Johnson owed? Real money. Hundreds of thousands. Money he'd embezzled and couldn't return." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "We focused on Martinez because he was obvious." "Exactly. He was obvious, which made him convenient. But the real killer wouldn't be obvious. The real killer would be someone with everything to lose if Johnson talked." "And who would that be?" Henry flipped to another page. "Johnson's business partner, Robert Chen. They ran the investment firm together. If Johnson was embezzling, Chen either knew about it or was involved. Either way, Johnson's arrest would have destroyed Chen's life." Robert Chen gave a statement. He was at a charity gala the night of the murder. 50 witnesses. He was at the gala until 10:30 p.m. The event ended at 11. But Johnson wasn't killed at 11. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The coroner's first report was right. The lividity patterns were wrong for the position the body was found. Johnson was killed earlier, probably around 9 p.m., and moved to his apartment later to make it look like a robbery." Marcus was listening now, really listening. "Chen could have killed him at 9, gone to the gala to establish alibi, then moved the body later." "Exactly. And there's more. The murder weapon was never found. You assumed it was disposed of. But what if it wasn't? What if it's still at Chen's office?" "We searched Chen's office. Nothing. You searched after Martinez was arrested, 3 days after the murder. Plenty of time to move evidence. But did you check courthouse records? Chen filed paperwork the morning after the murder. An emergency motion to freeze Johnson's assets. He was here in this building. Early. Before you even knew Johnson was dead." Marcus grabbed the notebook. "Where did you get all this?" "I listen. I watch. I've been in this building every day for 5 years. I see lawyers filing documents. I hear conversations. I read case files left on benches. Nobody notices a janitor." Marcus was flipping through the pages now. The detail was extraordinary. Financial records, timeline discrepancies, witness statement contradictions. This wasn't casual observation. This was investigation. "Who are you?" Marcus asked slowly. Henry met his gaze. "I'm someone who used to do what you do. A long time ago." "You were a cop?" "Not exactly. Army CID, Criminal Investigation Division. I spent 25 years investigating felonies in the military. Homicides, mostly." Marcus stared at him. CID. You're telling me you were a military detective? I'm telling you I know how to work a case. And this case is wrong. Martinez didn't kill Johnson. Chen did. And if you put Martinez on trial today, the real killer walks free. Marcus looked at the notebook again, then at Henry. His pride screamed at him to dismiss this. But everything Henry was saying made sense. The nagging doubts he'd been feeling suddenly had context. The trial starts in 90 minutes, Marcus said. Even if you're right, there's no time to investigate Chen properly. Then ask for a continuance. Tell the judge you have new evidence. Based on what? A janitor's notebook? Based on the truth. Isn't that what matters? Marcus felt the weight of the decision. If he was wrong, his career was over. If Henry was wrong, a murderer would go free and an innocent man would be convicted. But as he looked at those pages of meticulous notes, at the quiet certainty in Henry's eyes, he knew what he had to do. Marcus stood in the hallway for 30 seconds, weighing his career against his conscience. Then he called Sarah Chen, the prosecutor. Sarah, I need a continuance. What? The trial starts in 80 minutes. Judge Harrison will never. New evidence. Changes everything. What evidence? 24 hours to confirm, but we arrested the wrong man. The silence was deafening. Martinez is innocent? There's reasonable doubt. The real killer is Robert Chen. The business partner? He has an alibi. 50 witnesses. An alibi that doesn't cover the actual time of death. Give me 24 hours. Judge Harrison will crucify us. But if you're certain, I'm certain enough. Marcus turned to Henry. I need everything you have. Walk me through your theory. For the next hour, Henry laid out the case with precision. Lividity patterns, rigor mortis timelines, financial motive. Johnson's embezzlement created a time bomb Chen couldn't escape. Johnson was going to confess. He'd retained an attorney. Chen found out. If Johnson talked, Chen lost everything. So he killed him, staged it as robbery, let investigation fall on Martinez. Marcus took notes. How did you piece this together? I've been listening to hearings for 3 weeks. I heard the timeline, objections. I read the coroner's report and saw discrepancies. Then I looked at who benefited. Chen filed to freeze assets immediately. You were trained for this. Henry nodded. CID, 25 years. Old habits. Why courthouse work? Couldn't stop. This job keeps me around the justice system. I watch cases. Occasionally, I see mistakes before they become disasters. How often? More than you'd think. But detectives don't like being corrected by janitors. You're the first who listened. We need to search Chen's office again. You won't find the weapon, but you'll find financial records proving motive. Check his car, registered to his wife. You'll find trace evidence. How do you know about his wife's car? I listened when his attorney mentioned it during a sidebar. Chen said he took an Uber, but his wife's Mercedes was in the courthouse garage the morning after when he filed his motion. Marcus stared. You caught that from a sidebar? Nobody notices a janitor. We're invisible. Judge Harrison granted 48 hours. Martinez remained in custody, trial postponed. Marcus led a new search. They found what Henry predicted, emails discussing embezzlement, records showing Chen skimming funds, a deleted calendar entry for a meeting with Johnson at 9 p.m. the night of the murder. Chen's wife's Mercedes revealed trace amounts of Johnson's blood in the trunk. 36 hours later, Robert Chen was arrested. He confessed within 2 hours. David Martinez was released, life salvaged by an observant janitor. Marcus found Henry the next morning, emptying trash bins. We got him. Chen confessed. Martinez is free. Henry nodded. Good. I owe you an apology. I was arrogant. I almost convicted an innocent man because I was too proud to listen. You listened eventually. That's what matters. The department wants you as a consultant. Cold cases. Consultancy rates. Henry shook his head gently. I appreciate the offer, but no. Marcus frowned. Why not? You're brilliant at this. You just solved a case my team missed. We could use your experience. Because if I'm officially consulting, I'm not invisible anymore. The whole point is nobody sees me. The moment I'm an expert, people stop talking freely. Lawyers become guarded. I lose the advantage. Marcus hadn't thought of that. So you'd rather keep mopping floors? I'd rather keep doing what works. I see things because people don't notice me. But you could help so many more cases. I help the ones that need it. Like this one. If you'd been on the right track, I would have stayed quiet. But you were about to convict an innocent man. That required intervention. Marcus sat on a courtroom bench. How many times have you done this? Over 5 years? Maybe a dozen. Usually smaller things. Witness lying, evidence mishandled, attorneys missing connections. I leave anonymous tips when I can. Only twice before have I directly approached someone. Both times they ignored me. What happened? One was a wrongful conviction that took 3 years to overturn. The other is still serving time for something he didn't do. I tried. They wouldn't listen. The weight settled on Marcus. I almost made the same mistake. But you didn't. When faced with evidence that contradicted your theory, you had the courage to admit you might be wrong. That takes strength. Over the following weeks, word spread quietly through the detective division. Not the full story. Marcus kept Henry's identity quiet. But enough that detectives started paying attention to the janitor who worked the courthouse. Some left case files on benches longer than necessary. Others had conversations in hallways where Henry happened to be cleaning. It became an unspoken understanding. The janitor saw things. 3 months later, Marcus was working a cold case. A robbery homicide from 2 years prior. The suspect had been killed in a shootout with police before trial. Case closed. But something nagged at Marcus. He found Henry in the basement, organizing supplies. I need your eyes on something. Henry looked up. Another case? Cold one. Supposedly solved, but I think we got it wrong. Henry followed Marcus to a conference room where case files were spread across the table. For 20 minutes, Henry read in silence, tracing timelines, scanning evidence photos. Finally, he spoke. The suspect you killed wasn't the robber. He was the getaway driver. The actual shooter is still out there. How can you tell? The ballistics. The angle of entry suggests the shooter was left-handed. Your suspect was right-handed. It's in the autopsy photos, defensive wounds on his right arm. A right-handed person doesn't hold a gun in their left hand during a robbery. Marcus stared at the photos. We never caught that. You weren't looking for it. You had your suspect. Case closed. But the real shooter used him as a shield, let him die, and walked away. Can we prove it? Check for a partner. Your suspect had a cell phone. Pull the records. See who he called in the hour before the robbery. That's your real killer. The phone records led to a name. The name led to an arrest. The arrest led to a confession and closure for a family that had been told justice was served. Marcus was in line for a promotion. His captain attributed it to instincts and attention to detail. Marcus didn't correct him, but he knew the truth. On his last day before transferring downtown, Marcus found Henry one final time. I'm transferring. New position. I wanted to say thank you. Henry smiled. Congratulations. You've earned it. I've learned something from you. About humility. About listening. About not assuming I have all the answers. Good lessons for any detective. Marcus extended his hand. Henry shook it firmly. One question. Why do you really do this? The consulting offer was real money, recognition. Why turn it down? Henry was quiet. Because in 25 years of CID, I put a lot of people in prison. Most belonged there. But I've always wondered if I missed something. If someone innocent paid for my mistakes. This job lets me make sure that doesn't happen to someone else. That's worth more than money or recognition. As Marcus walked away, he turned back. Henry was already back to work, methodically cleaning, invisible to everyone passing by. A quiet guardian in a janitor's uniform, making sure justice was actually served. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories of quiet masters who prove that true expertise doesn't need recognition. It just needs to make a difference.